Hello, and welcome to the Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast. I don't know, whatever we call it these days. Episode number 380, recorded live on the Pi Day, March 14th, 2018. I am Shane Young, your wonderful host who actually doesn't like pie. And today we have a special guest with us. I can't even believe it. Lori Gowin has left the executive producer's booth and is now on-air talent. This is where, folks, she's going straight to Hollywood, right? She's going to be on ETV before you know it. Lori, say hello to these fine folks for the first time.
Hi. You actually get to see me today, and I'm not going to drop my computer like last time.
This is exciting stuff, folks, right? We've got Lori here, and she's going to be the source of the show, right? I'm going to just interview her. I'm going to show you my awesome interviewing skills. I can't use them on Todd. It overwhelms him. He can't handle being interviewed. But Lori's going to get interviewed. She's going to tell us about some new stuff, and this is going to be fun. On to production notes real quick. And speaking of that Todd fella, he's, vacationing in somewhere tropical and warm right now, probably sitting at the pool, probably watching in the chat room, quite frankly. But he is still one show behind. So, anytime I do a show by myself, he's always... It hurts him to produce those, so they're always a little bit later. So that one's a little late. This one with Lori in it, he'll probably do that the second he gets home. He might skip the last week, so who knows? But that's the only production note. And then next week we should be back to normal, where Todd and I are live and in living color, unless Lori's replaced me at that point. We'll see what happens today. And I guess we'll just jump into topics. I don't know, Lori, anything you want to throw in there? Anything you want to add before we jump into topics?
No, I just think it's fun that I'm doing this for you and not Todd.
Yeah, but I'm the one who gave you the promotion, right? If you remember, you were just the lowly intern, and I showed up and made you the executive producer. So really, your career and my career, they've been kind of tied together, so it makes sense.
That is true. We'll see who values me.
Exactly. What about contact info if somebody wants to get a hold of you before we jump in?
Lori.Gowin@Microsoft.com. I do have a blog that I rarely ever use. It's pointgowin.com/see-the-point, all one word. So
very cool. All right.
And I'm also Lori Gowin on Twitter if you really want to tweet me.
Tweeting you is fun, right? Especially when they find out, let's just jump in. What is it that you do these days for Microsoft, right? You gave us that fancy Microsoft email address. I know you have that pretty blue badge that a lot of us covet in the world. What is it you do for Microsoft?
So that changed recently. As of January, I am now a Power BI TSP, which is fancy for technical solutions professional, I think is the words. So I've not completely left the world of SharePoint. I still do a lot of that because some of my fellow TSPs that are also in Office 365 in the collab space still call on me and say, hey, can you help me out with this quick SharePoint call? And I'm like, sure, I can do that. But now I'm focusing more on Power BI. It's been a lot of fun. I'm having to learn a lot. So I'm learning a role and a technology all at once. So yeah, it's a fun technology. It's kind of growing on me. I was a little afraid of it at first, but I'm embracing it.
Well, and to that point, what made you jump ship, right? You were a SharePoint girl for as long as I can remember, right? I mean, your entire life that Shane knows of is you've been a SharePoint girl. Before that was the dancing and stuff. But we won't talk about any of that. But so, to that end, what made you jump ship and say, you know what, I think I'm going to go down this Power BI road?
So I just kind of had reached a point. I loved my job. I still loved being a SharePoint PFE, loved doing work with my customers, loved the SharePoint world, still love it, still dabble with it. Now that they're integrating still with Power BI and SharePoint, I'm still never going to get to leave it behind. But I just kind of reached a point where I was ready for something new and different, whether that was a new role still in the SharePoint world or a new role just within Microsoft, doing something different, or even a new technology. I just kind of was ready to challenge myself a little bit more. So at Ignite back in September, Matt Bremer actually approached me and he said, hey, we're doing this new thing with verticals and specializing in the TSP world. I think you'd be great at this. Can I talk to you about it? And I said, sure. And, it was at one of those parties. We were all having a lot of fun. And I thought, we'll see what happens. And he followed up, and I said, okay, yeah, sure. Here's my resume. And it took a little while to get in contact with all the people because he passed it to a manager, and she was out of the office, and then I was out of the office, and it was just all kind of crazy. But finally, we all made contact, and they were like, we really would like to talk to you about this. Do you think you can? What we need is Power BI. Do you think you can do it? And I said, sure. I like new stuff. Let's try it.
Yeah.
So here I am.
Well, give us the 30-second pitch on what exactly is Power BI, right? We've kind of talked about it a few times here and there. We've alluded to it, but what's your 30-second answer on what is Power BI?
Oh, a 30-second answer, I'm not sure. But so Power BI basically allows you to make sense of data and look at data that gives you the ability to make decisions on it, take action, and understand what's happening all at once. I am in the financial services industry, so that's the vertical that I joined. We have several. So I'm mostly working with a lot of banking, insurance, stock market, the whole financial services. And guess what they love more than anything?
Pie charts.
Excel, but yes, pie charts. Excel, they live in the world of Excel.
Yeah.
And so one of my first customers, they pulled up this Excel spreadsheet that had like millions of rows and columns, and it just like all this data, and I was just like overwhelmed. I'm like, this makes no sense to me. So Power BI allows you to suck that in, and it's pretty intuitive. If you start saying, hey, I want to look at this and this, it automatically kind of chooses a way to represent that for you graphically. Yep. That makes sense. So for somebody like me that's always been on the back end, I've never really been on the front end working with a lot of data and things like that. The things that I did with data was like backing it up and restoring it, that didn't do a whole lot of actually looking at data to try to understand it. It makes it easy for somebody like me or even some other power end user to say, I've got all this data, I don't really understand it, and then just start looking at it and making sense of it. And, you can change it around. You can say, hey, you showed me this in a pie chart. I'd rather see it in a bar graph, or I'd rather see it in other ways. And you can pick and choose. But it does have that sense of, I think this would be good to start, a good place to start for you. And then you can start to make sense of that data. So makes it really easy for me. You used a term long time ago, and we've all used it since back when we were in the infrastructure world, JBOD, which was just a bunch of disks. JBOD to me is now just a bunch of data. Mm-hmm. So I just look at it and start saying, okay, well, what's going to make sense? And pretty quickly can put together some reports that make sense, some dashboards. And then we also have a lot of other things that you can do with it, with analytics and being able to embed it with PowerApps. So that's back on you.
Yep.
So we can use PowerApps. Either you can embed PowerApps into your Power BI, or you can embed Power BI into PowerApps. It works both ways. So you can look at it there. If you're working on a Power App that needs to see data, or they want to look at data while they're working with that app, you can do that. You can then make decisions right from that Power BI report or dashboard and start something from a Power App. Maybe you're seeing the inventory is starting to decrease. You can order things, do stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. I still have a lot to learn. I would probably place myself at about a 200 to 300 level, maybe. I'd like to get up about 400 level, really be doing some awesome, cool stuff. One of the TSPs that I work with, that's a Power BI TSP, he is awesome, and he has done a lot of stuff. Like, he even does his presentation stuff out of Power BI with bookmarks and stuff and pages, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to get to that point.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great way to think about Power BI, right? Is, in my head anyway, it's all about creating and presenting actionable data, right? So finally, because the world figured it out. And this is one of the things, like when I talk to startups, I always push on them, start collecting data now. Even if you don't know what you're going to do with it, the more data you've got, we'll figure out a use for it later, right? We have it, but if you don't start collecting the data on day one, we don't have it. So once we get them with some data, this is any of the customers, but then, Power BI lets us start to build these actionable data, visualizations, right? I think visualization is one of the cool words they use. So that, you can put that the pointy hair managers be like, look, when this turns yellow, you need to go do something. And the neat thing then, and you kind of, stole my thunder there in your explanation, but, then you start looking at, you bring PowerApps into the equation so that you can embed a Power App in the Power BI dashboard. So then that way, with your actionable data, you can just move the mouse 6 inches over this way and start taking action via the Power App. And it's such a compelling story. I think we're early. I don't think the world's quite ready to embrace it. But I think Microsoft is genius for starting to put these pieces in place so that as the light bulb does come on for people and they start to build the actionable data, they can take it that last mile, that final step, and start to take advantage of it.
I think so. I think you're right. That's been a fairly recent thing, and I think it's going to take off once people start really seeing the power of what it can do. But right now I've seen a lot of demos of it. I've been playing with it a little bit. I don't have a good use case yet for it for my world, but I'm sure it's coming. I guarantee in the next few weeks I'll meet a financial services customer who says, now we want to take this and we want to take this from it. And I'm like, okay, that's a Power App. Let's do it. So
it's exciting stuff. It's, it's just an amazing time. And I think, the other interesting thing here, though, is you've kind of done the thing that I keep trying to talk to people about, right? There's this whole fear of us back in SharePoint people, right? We are both server nerds, server huggers, as I used to like to think about. But, we realize that, as you move forward now, you really need to be moving to SharePoint Online. There's just no two ways about it, right? There's certain use cases it doesn't make sense, but for the overwhelming majority of customers, getting off of on-prem, getting away from servers we can hug, and into the cloud makes a lot of sense. But us super back-end nerds, right, we're afraid. What am I going to do? What's my job going to be? And we shouldn't be, right? You've shown a perfect example. We take our skills, instead of keeping the lights on in the back closet like we've done forever, now we can be more forward-facing and actually help deliver solutions that build, an actual outcome for the business, right? Instead of just making the platform, let's go and do things that make our businesses better. It is requiring us to learn and grow our skill sets, but I don't know if you feel this way, but I just think it's so much more rewarding when, you can build something tangible that someone is like, yes, that solves my problem, right? Installing SQL Server on the back end, while it is the underlying portion of solving someone's problem, no one's like, oh, thank God Shane installed SQL today. But Shane rolled out that Power App, that enables the entire service fleet to do everything with a flick of their finger. That's a moment. I don't know. Am I crazy?
no, you're not. And I think that's been some of the fun that I've been having with it. Way back in the day when I started in SharePoint, way back, Laura and I were actually Exchange admins, and they gave us this thing and said, here, make it work. And the way I started was actually on the power end user side. I started with the info path and creating these things that solved business problems, that actually made stuff happen, not just another, hey, go figure out what this server does and how we can back it up and do all this stuff. That's where I started. Yeah. And I kind of was missing that a little bit because I'd been so much into infrastructure in the last few years that I hadn't been able to really get in there and look at what does the business actually need and how can we make this happen for them. Regardless of the technology, the business has pain. We've got all this data. We don't know how to make decisions. How can we look at it so we make the right decisions? And I think this is a technology that helps you be able to do that for your customers.
Yeah. I will point out, so Stacy in the chat room, she said she thinks she still has a compact ProLiant domain controller, which Mark then pointed out is probably 20 years old at this point. So that's probably a bad sign, Stacy. But to the server hugging thing, right? I remember my HP ProLiant, right? Because HP bought Compaq, and so I had an HP ProLiant domain controller that had died at my first job, right? We're talking mid to late 90s. And so I actually brought it home with me to fix it, right? Because reinstalling the operating system was like, it took, 4 or 5 hours with the all the floppy disk and things. And I actually fell asleep working on it, and when I woke up, I kid you not, I was spooning with the server, right? It was the warmest thing in my apartment. It was middle of winter. So I took server hugging to a whole nother level, took it back to my place, dined it. I don't know. It was awkward, but true story.
That server's somewhere complaining that Shane touched it in a bad place.
Yeah. And I could make another joke, but I'm not. I'm gonna get myself in trouble if I go down that road. So back to focus.
Yes.
So Power BI, kind of not summing it up here, but if you look at your, what you've done, what you've seen so far, what do you see coming in the next 6 months, a year, without getting yourself in any trouble? Where do you see Power BI kind of going that has you the most excited?
I just see it being more and more accessible to people, to the average end user, and not just to executives or to people that make sense. Because there's always that person with some spreadsheet that they've been keeping somewhere, and they would like to be able to make sense of that data to someone else. And look what I've done. And they're looking at a spreadsheet going, And so making it more and more accessible to the average user. I see that being a huge win. The average, of course, I work in the financial industry, so the average insurance agent that knows cars, knows houses, knows whatever, can sit there on his phone with some Power App and say, oh yeah, I've had this many new customers and this is what I'm doing right now, and see what they're doing and how they're working, and make their lives better even on their mobile phone while they're out and about, trying to get business for their, agency. So.
Yeah. Well, so you talk about empowering end users, and so this is where, now I'm going to be mean interviewer. One of the biggest challenges that people have with that scenario is, the licensing, right? Power BI licensing still kind of a little rough for, a lot of people to kind of swallow. I don't know. Any thoughts, guidance, things there,
It changes all the time, so be patient. I think since January, I've learned 2 new pieces of the licensing model that have changed in the last month or so. So just keep watching. Things are changing. And, bite off what you can start with as far as a small bite. If people start with the free, I want to go just download Power BI Desktop, start there. And then as it continues to grow, you can then just grow it as needed. The good thing is it's something you can add on whenever you need. So as your business grows, you can start adding more and more and growing it the way that you need to, as organically as your business needs.
Yeah, and that's one of the points a lot of people miss, right? Is you don't have to go and license, all 1,000 employees, Power BI tomorrow, right?
Right.
You can absolutely start with the Power BI free desktop. You can play, you can do, you take that, you show it to your boss, he gets excited. So maybe then you need to light up a few licenses for him and his boss to kind of look at it. And exactly what you said, let it grow organically. Because, while it's real easy, in my experience, for people to be like, oh my God, that'll cost $1 gazillion. I could never pay that much. But if you look at what you're using today, whether it's like a Crystal Reports or God help you if it's an Oracle solution or something, a lot of the BI solutions cost infinitely more than Power BI ever could. But you got to kind of flip that mindset that I can buy these licenses and turn off that $100,000 a year, licensing over there. And I think that's what a lot of people they're not connecting the dots. My experience.
Right. And yeah, it's difficult sometimes to estimate that in a large enterprise. But you have the ability to work with, all of the account team will work with you and figure out, okay, this is what you think you may need to start with. And as you said, you can come back and say, hey, we need more. Or, you know what, we don't need this many, and we can change it around. So you can absolutely do that. And if you underestimate, come back and ask for more. We'll be glad to sell you some more.
There you go.
I'll be glad to sell you lots more.
Lori's got quotas to hit, people. Come on.
Yeah, I do have quotas now. That was a little scary, but it's not so bad.
All right. Well, there you go. So there was our picking on Lori, making her talk a lot about herself phase of the show. Hopefully everyone enjoyed that as much as Lori hated it, because she does not like to talk about herself. So I don't know. Let's transition over to, we'll talk about me, because that's always a good topic. I enjoy talking about me. But no, so last week, I think some point last week, Todd and I released an article on Petri.com, SharePoint, who's in and who's out. And in that article, we kind of broke down, different things like, Power BI and PowerApps is in, right? Access and InfoPath is out. Custom Dev is out. Just kind of got to go through the different topics that we were having a lot of conversations with customers about. and make sure that kind of, here's our 2 cents. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but given no information about you, here's our answer to these questions. So I don't know, you gave it a read. Any thoughts?
I thought it was, it's the same discussion we've been having, and I think it's just going to keep getting, that list is going to continue to grow as things change faster and faster, right? Things that we thought were in, because I remember when you said SharePoint Designer was never in, it was in just for a little while. Just for a little while. It was a very in thing. Granted, it was in when you still couldn't control it and who got to use it and stuff, so that was a bad thing, but it was in during that point. And that was like a big deal. And of course, now we've moved past that and other things are in and it's out. But, I think the list is going to continue to grow and be very fluid. But the info path is out finally and PowerApps is in. Some people would argue that info path was never really in, especially those developers.
Yeah.
But, I agree with that completely. And it's took a while for PowerApps to really get in, which confused me. We had a user group meeting yesterday and it was on PowerApps, and we had way more people than we've had in a long time because Laura was coming in and doing, hey, here's PowerApps, customizing list forms with PowerApps, which is what we've been preaching to do with InfoPath while we were waiting for something else to happen, right? So that we could actually customize some solutions, was just customizing list forms and staying away from that full-blown InfoPath form library thing. But now we can do that with PowerApps, and there was a ton of people there. So I think it's really starting to pick up and really becoming the end thing now, as it's improved and grown.
Yep. Well, I'm going to keep saying it, right? 2018 is the year of PowerApps. Actually, I've got a big announcement about that here in a couple weeks. I'm not ready to share that one yet.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been interesting because you're exactly right. SharePoint Designer had a moment. All of us admins hated everything about it, but it was definitely very in vogue with the user community for a while. And it's so funny, though, now how 180 degree I've went with people. So, as I talk to customers about going to SharePoint Online, they're like, well, how do I customize this? How do I, make it look different? I'm like, shut up. We are not doing that. We are going to take out of the box. I don't care if it's ugly. We're going to accept this out of the box thing because we've gotten ourselves in so much trouble over the years. Just tell your users it's okay that it's, that column is 3/4 of an inch wide instead of 3/7 of an inch wide, right? I mean, that's the type of stuff that they want to change. And I'm like, there's no long-term value. There's no short-term value. It makes me more consulting money. It's the only value in changing that size of that column. It's not a solution. And I think, I don't want to get too excited here, but I think the light bulb is finally coming on for people that maybe we should just leave well enough alone and roll with what they give us for a while. I don't know. I'm sure that's just wishful thinking on my part, but I feel like people are kind of getting there.
I think so. And I think that less and less these days do I hear the please don't make it look like SharePoint thing. Just leave it. Just let's change this color. Let's make sure our logo's on there and we're happy. Yeah. And that's there. It's provided for you. You don't have to do a lot of customization to be able to do that. And I think that people are starting to realize that it prohibited them from getting to do some of the cool stuff that's available to you when you try to hold fast to this tight design that we have to have it look just like this, and we need headers and we need footers and we need this thing and can only be this wide and it has to be just like this. And I think now they're starting to realize, you know what, we need to worry more about the functionality than what it looks like all the time. Yeah, we want to have the brand recognition, but that's easy. It's a logo. It's a color, one or two little things on a page versus we have to have corners that are rounded and this and that, Yeah, we don't need all that.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I can't tell you how many six-figure contracts we had in the SharePoint 911 days for branding. Like, you're going to spend $100,000 to make this thing look slightly different. Or, totally different, whatever.
Yeah.
But, it's $100,000. When you upgrade the next version, we're going to throw it all away and charge you $100,000 again to do it. I'm just begging people not to do that type of stuff anymore.
Oh, me too. Like, don't change it. Just leave it alone.
So, that's good. Yeah, so I don't know. Todd and I, it's a good little article, though. I'd recommend you guys, if you get a chance, check it out. once again, it's an opinion piece. It's got Todd and I's normal snark. So, it's either really funny or really terrible. So if you're my mom, it's a really fun read. If you're my wife, you hate reading it. So where do you fall? Are you my mom or are you my wife? That's awkward.
I don't want to be either one of those.
So also, I think we'll talk about just for a second. I don't know if you saw, but there was a new security flaw announced in the AMD processors this week. I think just yesterday, actually. And it was an interesting one, not around the security flaw. I mean, yay, somebody figured out how to exploit some piece of code in some weird way. They'll fix that. It wasn't really interesting there. What I found more interesting about it was the way they went about it. So it's a good article to read about what seems like a shady process. So some security company that pretty much no one had ever heard of said, all right, we found this flaw in these AMD chips. They gave AMD like 24 hours notice. Normally industry standard is, 6 to 9 months notice before you release it. And they released it, I don't remember the URL now, but they released it with like some flashy, essentially AMDsucks.com website. That wasn't really the name, but it was very similar, right? It was this whole like well-produced, spent a bunch of money building a website to talk about how terrible these processors were because of this bug and to flaunt their security company. And it really just strikes me as somebody who owns a bunch of Intel stock or has a bunch of shorts on AMD, which they claim they don't, but the whole thing just seems shady. So I don't know. I don't know if you've looked at it at all or any of that, but it just didn't feel right to me.
Yeah, it definitely sounded like they were trying to profit from it in a way.
Yeah, they were more worried about hurting AMD than they were about saving the world,
protecting everybody else, right?
Yeah, and if you if you guys have an AMD chip, don't worry about it. It's only the special type of AMD processor that has like this processor on top of a processor. It doesn't affect you. You don't actually care at all. Other than it just seemed like more of the shady stuff that goes on in the world.
Right.
On sad news, I just want to take a moment of silence and say, heard that Stephen Hawking passed away at the age of 76. That was really sad.
It was very sad. We were talking about that this morning as the kids were getting ready for school. I told them and we were talking about that. So, it was he had an interesting perspective and lived a very long and full life and did a lot despite his illness. I mean, he was diagnosed with that at like 21, and that's a pretty long lifespan for somebody with that disease. So
yeah, they gave him 3 years to live at 21. He got to 76.
Right? Yeah.
I'm guessing that's just a case of he was just smarter than the disease, right? I mean, I don't know. I was always a big fan, right? I would love to study black holes and like read his books and understand them, but I'm just not that smart. I'm fully capable of admitting that. And then he did, all those pieces like where he would come on, he did Big Bang Theory. I think he did The Simpsons. He kind of rolled with, this is me. I mean, I'm super smart. I got all these really important, complex problems to solve for the world, but I'm good with just go out here and let's have a little bit of fun too. I don't know. It just seemed like such a great dude that we'll never get to know clearly, but I don't know. It was pretty cool. So big fan.
Yeah, I was too. So very sad news.
Yeah, we're not usually sad news type of show, but that one I felt like we wanted to share.
Mm-hmm.
What else I got? So on the PowerApps note, PowerApps added attachments for SharePoint List in the last week. This is kind of one of those mixed blessing things, So one of the things we've been pushing for in PowerApps is really to be able to work with document libraries and picture libraries directly. We're not there yet. We still don't have that. But so now we have this new control that lets us work with list item attachments, which in the grand scheme of PowerApps, what you really should be doing with PowerApps, it probably makes a lot more sense than what the thing is that we all want. But it's still very raw, right? So it kind of lets you interact one-to-one with like files that you've already saved on your machine, for example. But, the first scenario people always come up with is, I want to have a consent form and let people use the pin signature to sign that and then save that signature with the list item in SharePoint. Well, the attachment control can't work with the pin input control yet. I don't know. So this is one of those announcements everyone was really excited about. I'm kind of a little Debbie Downer on it. Like, it's progress, thank you, but maybe we need a little more progress here.
Yeah, I think that one kind of depends on your use cases. I remember back in the day doing forms that would use the lists web service so that we could add attachments to the forms and upload things. So I can kind of see where it would come into play maybe in some of those scenarios. That was some things we always wanted to try to use with old forms and workflows and things in the back. So maybe things like attaching, documentation for an application or whatever. So.
Oh yeah, I definitely think it has some very solid use cases. I just there was so much fanfare around it. I just want to make sure that people that don't actually do much with PowerApps weren't oversold on what it could do yet. I think we're going to get very shortly. I think all the functionality. Then we'll come back on here and be like, "Oh my God, they finally did it all! Yay!" But we're not. We didn't have that moment last week. Like if you just kind of glanced at the Twitter comments, you would have been like, "Oh, we had that moment." So that was what I wanted to kind of show. So there was that. Also, so speaking of PowerApps, right? We know that you can provide feedback for pretty much all the Microsoft content these days, and I know I've got a couple open ones for PowerApps itself. And you do a lot of that through the user voice stuff. But just last week, Microsoft tweeted out a thing for providing feedback on the SharePoint documentation. So as they kind of look into SharePoint 2019, they want to figure out what documentation are you using today in SharePoint 2016. I almost said 17 for some reason, or 2010 or 2013, right? Because they realize that there's a large scale there. But I don't know. I thought it was a nice little survey, give you guys a chance to provide some feedback on the articles that you do like, the type of content you like, what you'd like to see different. Help the documentation people change, evolve a little bit. Not evolve. Well, maybe evolve's the right word. They want to do a better job. They want to make sure they're making the right content. This is your chance to say this is the type of content you like.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty brave of them. I can tell you I've worked with a couple of different teams here in the last month or so at Microsoft, who are the documentation teams, who are all doing the same thing. They're trying to figure out, should we stop writing stuff and just make everything YouTube videos? Should we, just put out all of our documentation via tweets? Should it all be on carrier pigeons? They realize that the world's evolving and they're trying to figure out the best way to do it. So kudos to all of them as they try and figure it out. This is your chance to say how you think it should evolve.
Right. Had you taken that survey yet?
I started to fill it out, and then I always struggle with those type of things because the questions are so targeted at somebody who owns, I'm the administrator of super company X. And with me, it's like I just have to check every box because I've read them all. I've worked on every version. So I often don't fill out those surveys. I did read through the questions though.
Yeah. So when it asks about the specific documents or videos or, which things actually you used, I thought that was pretty cool looking through there because I was like, yep, use it. So I kind of wanted to be like, you know what, I do all this other stuff, but I really want to tell you which ones actually worked the best for me.
Yeah.
So, even if you feel like you did, where does it really apply? Because we do support everything, but those articles we still use them, so we should be able to give that feedback, say yes, this was useful to me. One of the links I think was the video that Neil and Bob and them did, and I have used that a ton. Actually, when I was a PFE, we taught a workshop on SharePoint 2016 admin on the zero downtime patching piece. I always just kind of went, I could talk to you about this, but here, let's watch this video. And I would play the video because it did so much a better job of them really understanding and seeing what was happening and watching it real time with them demonstrating everything than I could have even there in class, because it's really hard for us to be able to demonstrate zero downtime patching. Like, you can do it, talk about it, but that really, I thought, did a better job. So sometimes I would be like, you know what, I'm going to tell you what I have to tell you, but then let's watch this together. And I would make sure we did that as part of the training that I did.
Yeah, and I was really glad to see the zero downtime patching video in the survey, right? Because I'm with you 100%. Was the video perfect? No. But was it a giant step forward in, teaching, right?
Hmm.
And that's where I've had so much success with my YouTube channel, right? I just take simple, stupid stuff and I clearly articulate it and show it to you, in a not a controlled manner, but in a very logical walk through the process so you can see how this works. And it's really resonated with people. So
Hmm.
I think the video model, now there's still times where you want written words, but the video model is really doing well. And so hopefully Microsoft is getting that note. I know from some meetings I've had that they're getting the note. So we're hopefully going to see more of that.
I think so too. I hope so.
Let's see. My notes went blank as always.
Nope, sorry, I put in a time.
That's what you're supposed to do. So let's see what else we got here. Speaking of my YouTube stuff, I'll just jump on that real quick. I did 2 videos last week. Actually, I did 5. I did a video every day last week. Oh, it was a lot of work, but it was cool because I like videos. But I did one on the PowerApps on-premises data gateway. And as you know, right, the PowerApps on-premises data gateway is the same gateway that PowerApps uses, Power BI uses, some of the Azure stuff uses, Flow uses. It's it's like one of the best pieces of tech that come out of Microsoft in a long time. It doesn't require any firewall holes. But it enables these scenarios where I can finally talk with PowerApps to my on-prem SharePoint, my on-prem SQL, my on-prem file shares. It's a really great solution.
Yep.
So I did a video on that. I will tell you, we'll take a tangent here. So I named the video on YouTube, PowerApps On-Premise, no S at the end, Data Gateway. And I tweeted it, and I got a lot of crap for it, right? People were like, hey, dummy, that's not how you spell it. That's not how you do it. I'm like, I get it, but I named it that for a very specific reason. And so being the listeners here, I'm gonna tell you one of my tricks. So one of the things that you can do if you've got the patience for it is you can go in and you can mess with YouTube and you can do lots of fake searches to figure out what it is people are actually searching for. And it turns out that when people are looking for the data gateway with PowerApps, they are typing overwhelmingly, the majority of the time, they are typing PowerApps on-premise with no S at the end, data gateway. So you can tell me how wrong it is, how stupid I am for typing it, whatever makes you happy. But I can tell you that from a search results point of view, the best name for that video was on-premise. So I'm not here to give a grammar lesson. I'm here to get more views for my videos. So I don't know.
I think you're right. Having written a ton of training documentation, that is, and me being the wordsmith, I have to go proofread everything.
Yep.
I always add the S. Overwhelmingly, when tech people are writing things, they type it on premise. So they're going to look for it on premise instead of on premises, as we all know it's supposed to be. So I agree. I think you're right.
Yeah. And this is, I will not give you the lecture, but Todd is a week or 2 away from getting a lecture on grammar. So yes, early last week, or early this week, I don't know. At some point, I was thinking about this whole thing, right? Because this whole, yelling at me that on-prem, premise was the wrong thing, and people were sending me links to dictionary.com, and which is all fine. I mean, I like the feedback. If you're one of the people that provide the feedback, keep it up. I don't mind at all. But I've decided that grammar people, are just, I guess, prejudiced against people who are not grammar people, right? This is another form of ism, right? Just another form of finding a way to, belittle a different set of people. And so Todd's going to get a really long lecture on my thoughts on this sometime soon. You will not get the lecture, though.
Thank you.
Because I know you're also...
not... Go ahead.
I know you're also another person who's a big stickler for grammar.
Not as much as he is. He's probably the only person who will correct me when I'm chat typing him and I don't capitalize and use periods. So, you know what? I'm just trying to get you a message real fast. Leave me alone.
He's given up on me. He doesn't no longer corrects me. Yeah. So anyway, that was one of the videos. The other one is I did one on creating HyperV VMs on PowerShell. With PowerShell. So using PowerShell to create a bunch of Hyper-V VMs from either just one-offs or actually pulling from a CSV file with a bunch of server names and server specs. Just thought it was a fun little topic. Hyper-V seems to be kind of popular especially because you can use it, on your Windows 10 local machine, which is what I do these days. So I thought it was some fun PowerShell.
Cool.
Nothing too exciting there. I don't know.
We do still create some VMs locally once in a while, right?
Yeah, we do. To make the data gateway video, right? I had to do, so I made a data gateway VM on my machine, and then I installed, of all things, SQL Express on my local computer just to like really flow it all through. And it worked, right? They're on different domains. Everything's disconnected, and it still all just works. So
cool.
I don't know, Lori. I think that's topic-wise everything I had. Anything else you want to throw in there?
I think that's about it.
All right. Well, then, so Community Corner, real quick. We'll run through some of these. SharePoint Saturday Vancouver, April 14th. Cloud Friday Nashville, and SharePoint Saturday Nashville. That is disappearing from me. I think it's May 4th and May 5th.
That's correct. Sorry.
I hate you. It's not your fault. Montreal call for speakers is open right now, the SharePoint Saturday Montreal, and that event is June 2nd. And then SharePoint Saturday Charlotte is August 11th. I know Daniel's very excited about that one. He's brought that one up a couple times. So a lot of fun things there. Promotion-wise, also, don't forget that Todd and maybe not Warren Buffett will be at SharePoint Saturday Omaha in April 7th. Todd is doing the keynote, which is probably the reason Buffett will not show up. These poor famous people that we talk about, I feel so bad for them. They probably get a rundown of their weekly press clippings, and they're like, why does this technology show keep talking about me? Mm-hmm. So, if you're out there, Warren, you're listening, send me a note. We'll chat. SharePoint North America is the other big announcement we've got. May 21st through 23rd. You know about it. You know it's going to be awesome. Todd and I are going to do some admin-y stuff. We've got the post-con at the end. I can also tell you, I probably should not supposed to tell you, but Todd and I's post-con's very high on the list of most popular. So it was kind of a nice little ego boost. And remember, as you sign up for that, if you use the referral code YOUNG, Y-O-U-N-G, not that you didn't know how to spell the word young, you get $50 off, a hug from me, and a hug from Lori. Because Lori's here, she will give you a hug also for using my code.
No. I'm only going to give you a hug if you use Gowin, which is easy to spell. It's like go and win.
No chance. Where's the mute button? All right. And then we also have SP TechCon Boston. The call for content has finally ended there. So I am on the committee that gets to help review those. I think I have I can't even tell you the number, but it is hundreds of submissions. So they did a good job of getting the word out. So I get to go through those. But that will be in Boston, August 26th through the 29th. So
yep, I will be there. We're actually working on the women in tech diversity panel stuff too right now. So
very nice. I'm trying to get myself a PowerApps workshop there. So, thankfully I'm on the selection committee. So if it happens, it's because I'm a bad person. But, people in power corrupts. I'm corruptible. It happens.
I'm on the selection committee too, so I can quash that.
I will show you which one to place your votes on, ma'am. But yeah, I think that's everything we've got for today. Lori, any parting words for our dear friends?
Nope, this was fun. We'll do it again sometime when Todd's on vacation.
Very cool. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you joining me today.
Me too.
All right, everybody. Thanks and have a great day.